Good morning everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. I hope you all are having a lovely day today. I am having a lovely morning. It is 55 degrees and I am just enjoying myself right now. It's still supposed to get up to about 97 degrees today. Oh, it feels so good right now though. I'm not going inside until it starts to warm up. So anyway, I wanted to talk to you all today about my 2023 cool flower plan. Yes, you heard me right, 2023. I know it is July. I know we're not even close to the end of the season, but having done my cut flower garden for a couple years now, I know that I need to start thinking about it at this time of the year. And I wanted to get this video out because I wanted to remind all of you to start thinking about it as well if you're planning on doing the cool flower method. Now, a little background, the cool flower method I learned from Lisa Mason-Ziegler. She has a wonderful YouTube channel. She has a cut flower garden in Virginia, I think it is, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Virginia, and she came out with this wonderful book. I'll link it down below. I love this book. It was so helpful for me. I've done cut flower gardens before and I haven't used the cool flower method. And what you have to do is you have to wait until your last frost date to get all your seedlings that you've grown inside into the ground. And that's fine, that's great, but I am impatient and I want blooms as soon as possible in the year. And the way to do that is actually to do fall sowing or fall transplanting of your cut flower seedlings or cut flower seeds. And when you choose the right seeds to fall transplant or fall sow, those babies can grow all through the winter. You won't see any top growth, right? Nothing's growing from the top because it's too cold, and the plant is putting all its energy into the root growth. So as soon as it starts to warm up in the late winter, early spring, all of a sudden that top growth catches up and then you have blooms so much sooner than you would had you sown or transplanted those seedlings in the spring, which is the normal time to do it. So I highly recommend that you guys check out, I think it's called The Gardener's Workshop, Lisa Mason-Ziegler, her website, her book, all that kind of stuff. I also have a bunch of videos on it. I'll link a couple of them in the description down below, because if you guys are into cut flowers or you're starting to think about doing cut flowers, this is a fantastic method that we can start planning for now, and it just allows you to squish as many cut flowers in to the season as possible. So I have a relatively small cut flower garden. It's 10 by 20 feet. I have it in my front yard right next to my driveway. I try and fit as many flowers into that little space as possible. I jam it in. This year, 2022, I was very, I was a little greedy, I'll say, and I tried to get 3 rounds of flowers into my cut flower garden. So that was my cool flowers over the winter, the 2021-2022 winter. Those all bloomed in late winter, early spring, and they were gorgeous and they were wonderful, and I was so happy to have them. Then I took some of those out and I changed them over to my spring summer round, or I call it a succession of planting flowers, my cut flowers. And then I started to notice that I was kind of squeezing it a little too tight. I had set out this whole plan last year of, timing and how long it took for the first bloom and when I could start taking them out and all that kind of stuff. So technically it worked. My timing worked. I did have a bloom on the flowers when I was supposed to have a bloom, but there's a difference between one bloom on a flower on a plant and the whole plant covered with blooms, which is what you want. So my error in my planning this year was I had squeezed in the amount of time, so it was too short. So the flowers were blooming, but I only had 1 or 2 blooms, and then it was time for me to switch it over into the next round of planting. So again, like I said, I was being too greedy. My plan for 2023 is just to cut it back just a little bit and go down from 3 rounds or 3 successions of flowers to just 2. And when I say successions or rounds of flowers, I know that I can keep planting every 2 weeks and keep getting blooms and all that kind of stuff. So that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is successions of different types or different varieties of the flowers. I want to grow as many different flowers as possible, and so that's why I'm flipping things over so much. I get a lot of comments about people saying, why don't you plant a plant that's going to bloom all season long? And that's what I did my first year of my cut flower garden, and it was wonderful. But like I said, I'm being greedy, and I want to plant as many varieties as I can, just to have the different flowers that I can make bouquets with and enjoy and play around with. To me, it's fun to try a bunch of different varieties. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. It makes sense in my brain, but I realize as I talk about it in videos, I think I confuse some people. So hopefully that clears it up for the people that are giving me advice to use the plants that bloom all year. That's actually not what I want. I want it to bloom for a short period of time, get as many flowers as I can out of that plant, and then move on to the next plant, just simply because I have such a small space. If I had more room, if I had as much room as I needed, I would just leave these flowers in, and I would just put the next variety right next to it and the next variety right next to it. But I am gardening in a very small space. I live in the middle of a neighborhood, in the middle of suburbia, and space is absolutely my limiting factor. I wouldn't even say time, because I live in California zone 9B. So I have a very, very long growing season. It's really space that's my limiting factor. All right, so after having said all that, what I wanted to do today is I wanted to show you all my cool flower planting plan, the plants that I am planning to transplant into my cut flower garden this fall. So then they're gonna winter over, and then it's going to be my cut flower garden in late winter, early spring 2023. Now, a lot of these seedlings, or a lot of the seedlings that you guys are gonna choose, are going to need time, time to germinate, time to grow, time to get to the point where it's able to be transplanted out. And you also might have to prep it, like putting it in the freezer, pre-chilling it or pre-sprouting it, or, all of those type of things. So it's something that you guys kind of want to start thinking about now. And if I'm thinking about it now in zone 9B, when my first frost date is December 4th, if you live in a lower zone than I do, you probably definitely want to be thinking about it now and start setting your timing up and figuring out when you need to sow your seeds and all that kind of stuff, which is why I'm coming out with the video mid-July. So there's that. All right, so I do want to say I made another Google Sheets for my planting plan this year, 2022. I made a Google Sheets that I shared the link with you all, and that was my triple greedy planting plan that I didn't stick to exactly. I stuck to it a little bit. I made another one, and it's just a small one, and it's just for my cool flower planting plan. If you guys look in my video description down below, there's a link to it, and so you can kind of see exactly what I'm talking about. I also have links to all the flowers, to all the seeds that I chose, and then the heights of them, and then the dates that I'm using. So I have all of this written down for you all, so if you need to take notes from this video, or just go to that link and look on it there, and you guys can reference it there. And hopefully you guys can use that to fit it into your own plan and change your own dates. Again, my first frost date here in Davis, California is about December 4th. Now, I say that with a big asterisk next to it because it's December 4th. However, it seems to be getting later and later, as everything starts to warm up. So I have that in the back of my mind when I'm thinking of all of these times and dates, is that it technically is December 4th, and it can be December 4th, but it could also more likely will be a little bit later than that to have a hard frost. Okay, so here is my cool flower planting plan, and you guys can see I've lined them all up, and I've actually color coded them. Not exactly, they kind of correspond to the bloom colors, but it's more just to keep, just from my eye, just to kind of look at it. That's also the reason why I start with row 20 and then go down to row 1. That's how I look at my cut flower garden. If I'm standing in the street and looking at my house, row 20 is the one closest to my house, and row 1 is the one furthest away from my house. What I did this year is I did kind of a jumbled planting plan, and I did not do rows for my cut flower garden. Next year, I want to go back to rows because I liked rows. I felt like it kept things really organized and straight. I might go back and forth every year, but at least for 2023, I'm planning to plant in rows. So row 1 all the way through row 20, again, it's 10 feet wide and 20 feet in length. So each row is about 1 foot wide. I do have drip irrigation hooked up to it. I use the emitter tubing, and I use the every 6 inches emitters. I'm probably going to change out the emitters this fall just because they've been in for, you know, almost 2 years now, I would say. So I think it's probably time to change them out. So I will be doing that to prep the bed, and then I will also be adding a couple inches of compost and tilling that in. I'm going to borrow my neighbor's tiller again. So if you guys look at this Cool Flowers planting plan, I've organized it into the rows. I have each of the flower names, then I have the heights. And so what I like to do is I like to do the closest to the house, I like to do the tallest, and then as it gets closer to the street, I go down to the shortest. And that way, so when you look at it as you're standing on the street, you can basically see every flower, and it looks really, really pretty. The first year I had a cut flower garden, I did it like that, and I thought it was gorgeous. The next column, I have my notes, and that's just kind of reminders of what I'm going to do. So for the sweet peas, I have the Elegance formula and the Elegance watermelon. I'm going to put up vertical Hortonova netting, and Hortonova netting is just a plastic netting that flower growers use to support flowers. You can also use that for supporting like peas or, you know, veggie seeds that like to climb. So I'm going to put those up vertically, and then if you look down at the snapdragons, I'm going to change it so it's horizontally, because when snapdragons fall over, they're pretty much done. They're falling over, and they'll grow sideways and then kind of curve upwards. So I want to kind of support my snapdragons as much as possible, which is why I'm doing the horizontal Hortonova netting. The next column is just notes for myself for whether I need to pre-chill the seeds, whether I need to pre-soak the seeds, whether I need to pre-sprout the bulbs, all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, the sweet peas I need to soak on 9/24 for 24 hours, and then you see the next column over, I'm going to sow them on 9/25. If you look at the AMMI, I need to freeze it on September 4th, and then I can sow it on the 18th. So these are just reminders for myself, and I actually have all of these dates into in my gardening calendar, and so all I have to do is go down, look at the week, and see what I have to do that week. So this is just the way that I keep myself organized with the cut flower garden. All these dates, I feel like if I didn't have this stuff written, I would miss it, and I would be a jumbled mess, and I would not remember when I was supposed to pre-chill, when I was supposed to pre-soak, when I was supposed to sow, and I would be late with everything. And it's kind of a hard that you don't want to be late with this cool flower method, because if you're late, you know, you're going to be too late to put them in the ground, and then you'll totally miss your opportunity. So timing is really, really important with this cool flower method, which is why I try and stay super, super organized. So you can see the next column is transplant, and most of them are transplanting on October 30th. And October 30th is 5 weeks before my first frost date on December 4th. Now, Lisa Mason Ziegler, the creator of the Cool Flower Method, I think she recommends transplanting out 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date. The reason why I'm doing 5 weeks is, like I was saying, that we are getting warmer and warmer and warmer and staying warmer later into December. And so I don't want my transplants to get too big. If I put my transplants in too early in the fall, they will get too big and they will get too damaged during my first frost. During, you know, we have 1 or 2 frosts over the winter season, they'll be too big and they'll get too damaged, and I don't want that. So it's like I said, it's very important timing. You don't want them to be too big. You also don't want them to be too little. So I've decided to do 5 weeks before my first frost. If you have cooler weather than I do, you might want to go up to 8 weeks, you know, transplanting those little baby seedlings out 8 weeks before your first frost. And then if you look further down, I have all my spring blooming bulbs that I'm going to fall plant, tulips and daffodils, ranunculus and anemones. And those are all, you know, I'm going to pre-sprout those, most of those, not the daffodils, or pre-chill the tulips. And then you can see I'm planting them out on different weeks, mainly so that I don't have to do too much work all on one day. There's a little bit more variance with fall planted bulbs. You just have to plant them, you know, within a range of weeks. And so it's a little bit easier. And those aren't really, you know, I don't count those as my cool flower method. They're just fall planting bulbs, which is pretty straightforward. All right, so what I want to do right now is I want to go through each flower that I've chosen for my cut flower garden. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about it, why I chose it, and why I think it's a good option. Again, this is my 3rd season of cut flowers, so I feel like I know a little. I mean, obviously each year you learn more and more, but I'm pretty excited because I feel like I'm finally starting to get a handle on it. Before it was all trial and error, and now it's kind of like, okay, I know that this is going to do well, and here's why. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So the first one I'll get into is the Sweet Pea Elegance mix, and I got these from Johnny Seeds. Sweet peas are beautiful, gorgeous flowers, and they smell so, so good. I had always had trouble growing sweet peas in my zone because we get so hot so soon in the season after our last frost date. So if you spring plant sweet peas in our zone, if you live in a hot area like I do, by the time they get up and even get close to blooming, it's too hot and they peter out because it's too hot. Sweet peas like cool weather. So the way to get around that is to fall plant your sweet peas. And that just makes all the difference in the world. And that, I think sweet peas is really what got me into this cool flower method, because it just made such a difference for me. So when you fall plant the sweet peas, like I said, the roots are taking the time to grow. And then as soon as it just starts to get just a little bit warm in the winter, that's when the plants just start taking off, and then they start blooming. And then at least this year, I had 2 months, I would say, of beautiful sweet pea blooms. And then I even ended up taking them out before they even stopped blooming, like I said, because I wanted to switch over to the next thing. So sweet peas, I think, are always going to be a staple in my cool flower plan. And this Elegance formula mix is one that I wanted to try simply because I just loved the colors. So I'm excited about that. The next one that I chose was another Sweet Pea Elegance, and it's the watermelon. And the reason why I chose this one was I was watching the Florette show on Discovery, and in her, you know, in some of the clips, it's just such beautiful cinematography. In some of the clips, she had some sweet peas that looked this color. And of course, they're her own seeds, and I could have purchased them from her, but I always have trouble getting them before they sell out. So this Elegance watermelon looked like the color that she had in that show, and I definitely wanted it. So it's not quite a spring color. To me, it looks a little bit more late spring, summer color, but I don't care. I think they're so, so beautiful. And I can't grow sweet peas in the summer, so I'm going to enjoy them in the spring. So the next two are AMMI, and I think of AMMI as false Queen Anne's lace. So Queen Anne's lace is a beautiful flower, however, it's poisonous. So you don't want to grow Queen Anne's lace, right? But white dill AMMI and then green mist AMMI, I think is so beautiful. I think I use it as a filler, actually. I think it's a really, really pretty filler. And what I did is I've actually only grown the white dill AMMI. But when white dill AMMI starts out, it starts off as green, and then it matures into white, and as the blooms open, and it's really beautiful. And what I found myself doing when I grew this the first time is I found myself cutting the really young flowers while they were green, because I wanted the green filler as well as the white filler. So this year I decided to do both of them. I decided to do the green mist and the white dill, and those are going to be my main fillers this year. All right, so next I have Snapdragons, and I chose to do the Madame Butterfly mix. The main reason why I chose to do this is because that's what was available. I have, you know, seeds, they sell out all the time. They're just so hard to get your hands on the specific ones you want. So when I went to purchase all these seeds, the individual Madame Butterflies were out, but then they had this Madame Butterfly mix, and I wanted the Madame Butterfly version because I really think it's absolutely gorgeous. It's so frilly and it's so beautiful, and it performs really, really well in our climate. I'm really starting to notice how different things perform. For instance, the Apple Blossom Snapdragon did not perform well for me, and it's because snapdragons, you know, there's different groups of snapdragons that will blossom at different times. But part of the problem is we get so hot when some of the summer snapdragons start blooming, and it's too hot for them. And so I don't get a very good production out of them. But the Madame Butterfly, I get a really, really good crop when I do that one. So I'm excited to do the mix, and I'm going to do 3 rows of the Madame Butterfly mix. So I'm going to have plenty of snapdragons to play with. After that, I have the king-sized apricot aster, and I did the apricot aster the first year. I didn't do the cool flower method. I just sowed it in the early spring. And it's funny because an apricot aster, or an aster, normally is kind of like a late summer fall flower. That's what everybody talks about and everybody says. However, this was one of the first flowers that I had to bloom in my cut flower garden. I remember my absolute favorite bouquet I've ever made, the focal flower, was this apricot aster, and I've just been in love with it ever since. So what I did this year is I put the apricot aster in one of my bonus plantings, which I consider my bonus plantings when I'm planting out into my regular garden, not into my cut flower garden. And so it's growing outside right now, and I'm actually going to probably harvest some right now, but it's so hot that it seems to be scorching the petals, and they're not growing as well as they did when they bloomed a little bit earlier. So for me, in my zone, king size apricot aster, I think is going to do really well as a cool flower, and I think that it's going to thrive at the time that I want it to and bloom really well at the time that I want it to. You can't control Mother Nature. You know, you can look at the instructions all you want, but gardening is an art. It's not a science, and so you have to kind of look at it and see how it does in your own garden. And for me, apricot asters do well earlier in the season when it's a little bit cooler, as opposed to mid to late season where it's just super, super hot until November. Okay, so the next flower I'm trying, I've actually never grown before, and that's stock. And I'm excited to grow stock. Again, inspiration from Florette. She likes to use stock all the time. And so I'm just not familiar with this plant. I'm not sure how it will do in my zone, and how it will do with this cool flower method, but I'm really excited to try it. And I think it'll be really, really pretty as kind of like a supporting flower. I don't think it's going to be a focal flower for myself. I think it's just going to be one of those supporting flowers. So I have 2 rows of stock and then 2 rows of the king size apricot aster. The next one I haven't grown either, and that is a sweet white dianthus. And the reason why I chose this one is because in the description of the sweet white dianthus, they talked about how it was one of the first ones to bloom in the spring, right? So with cool flower method, the goal is to get blooms as early in the season as possible. So when I look through all of these seeds and I look through the descriptions on the websites, one of the things I was looking for was, you know, if they had anything to say about it early blooming. And when there was a flower there that talked about super early blooming, I was right there, and I was, you know, that one went in my cart. So the sweet white dianthus was one of them that Johnny Seeds was just boasting about how early it was and how early it bloomed in the season. So I'm excited to see how, you know, which one is going to be the first flower to bloom for me. All right, so that is it for my cool flower seeds that I'm gonna sow. I do have more bulbs, but like I said, they are just fall planted bulbs. It's not really a new concept. Everybody knows about fall planting their bulbs, but I'm still adding them into my cut flower garden. So I wanted to show you guys which ones I'm planning to do. So check out Lisa Mason Ziegler's book, The Cool Flower Method. It's super interesting. To me, it's like, it changed the game. It changed my game of cut flower gardening because it did what I needed it to do. It added in so much more time for me to grow more varieties of flowers in the small space that I do have. So it does depend on what zone you live in. If you live in a lower zone, you know, you have to check what the hardiness is of the cut flowers that you're planting to cool flower method plant. So you need to make sure that the flowers are hardy in your zone. And in the book, there's a really good table where it talks about which flowers are hardy in which zones and which ones will work for you. So if it's not hardy in your zone, say a flower is hardy only until zone 8 and you live in zone 7. It doesn't mean you can't grow that flower. It just means you have to plant it in the spring. But what Lisa Mason Ziegler recommends is not planting it as the seed packet says, but actually even planting it earlier than that so you can take advantage of the cool flower method in the spring. So even if you're planting in the spring, you still get earlier blooms than you would if you did the traditional method, which is wait until your last frost and then plant everything out. So I think it's really, really cool, and I really recommend you guys look into it if you're getting started with cut flower gardening. Okay, so I did want to talk about my bulbs real quick. So I have 4 different types of bulbs. I have tulips, daffodils, ranunculus, and anemones that I'm planning to plant. So I am so excited about the tulips. I grew tulips for the first time this past year, and it's really exciting for us to grow tulips here because we normally don't grow tulips here in Zone 9. I live in Northern California, and our temperatures just do not get cold enough over the winter for tulips to thrive here. Tulips need a certain amount of chill time over the winters for them to produce enough sugars, or I'm not sure all the science behind it, but they need enough chill time for them to bloom appropriately. If they don't get enough chill time, the tulips will be really short and deformed, and they might not even bloom. It's really sporadic. So it's almost not even worth it to try planting tulips at that point. So the way that we get around that is you can pre-chill your tulip bulbs. And now you can purchase pre-chilled tulip bulbs from bulb suppliers, right? They have that, knowing that that not everybody's winters get cold enough for tulips to thrive. I have a fridge in my garage, and we just, to my family's chagrin, we just store tulips in there for a little bit during the winter, and we just store drinks in there and different things like that. So there's no fruit. We don't store any fruit or vegetables in there, so it's a perfect place for me to pre-chill my tulip bulbs. What they recommend is pre-chilling your bulbs for 10 to 14 weeks before you plant your bulbs out. And you still want to plant your bulbs in the fall. So Eden Brothers is where I'm getting all of my bulbs from this year. I've never tried them before, but their website is super, super cool. I was spending hours looking on their website, so I decided to go with them. And I'll let you guys know how they all do. But I picked out the double pink mix from tulips from there just because I thought it looked so pretty. And again, a mix I think will be perfect because I'll get a lot of different varieties to try out and to have for my bouquets. They are going to send out their bulbs in mid to late September. And so for me, I'm going to start chilling them on October 2nd, and then I don't remember how many weeks this is. It's between 10 and 14. I am going to plant them out into my cut flower garden on December 16th. So that's my plan for tulips. That's what I did last year. It worked absolutely perfectly. These are just the tulips that I'm going to do in my cut flower garden. I'm still planning on planting tulips in the rest of my garden. So I have to get on ordering those and planning to pre-chill those, but these are going to be my cut flower garden tulips. Then the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to do daffodils. And now daffodils are not like tulips. We have daffodils on the side of the road on the freeways. We have them all over here, and daffodils do really well, and they perennialize and they naturalize here. So daffodils are super, super easy for us. So you don't have to pre-chill them. You don't have to do anything. You just have to put them in the ground and they will come up for you. And I love daffodils. Daffodils are one of my favorite flowers because they come up so early, and it's just a sign that winter's basically over and it's time for spring. So I knew I wanted some daffodils. I usually put daffodils in my front annual annual swoop, but I never want to cut those for my cut flower garden. So I really wanted to put daffodils in my cut flower garden this year so I could use them for my bouquets. And so what I chose from Eden Brothers was the citrus sorbet mix. And I'm really excited about that because again, it's another mix and I think I'll get a lot of different options to choose from for my cut flower garden. So really easy. I'm just going to plant them on November 27th. I could do it on the same day that I planted my tulips, but I kind of want to spread it out so that I'm not planting a ton all in one day because that's just hard. All right, next one I have is the ranunculus. I got two different varieties. I got the CHAMALLOW mix and then the romantic mix. So CHAMALLOW is like this apricot-y, creamy pastel color that I thought was super pretty, and it looked like marshmallows. I'm not sure what CHAMALLOW means, but it looked really pretty. And then the other one I got was romantic mix, which was pinks and purples and whites and really, really beautiful. I grew ranunculus last year and they were one of the first flowers to bloom in the winter, early spring. So super excited about them. So for ranunculus, I do pre-sprout them. And what that means is I soak them. I soak the corms. So you get the corms from, I'm getting them from Eden Brothers and they're going to be shriveled and dried up, and I'm going to soak them and then I'm going to put them in a tray filled with soil. And then I actually stick the tray in my fridge just because in October when I'm going to pre-sprout them, you want to pre-sprout them 2 weeks before you plant them out. In October, it's still really, really hot here. It's still super warm here. So it's too warm to leave them out. I could probably leave them out in my house, in my air conditioning, but the fridge is just the perfect temperature for them and it's already full of tulips and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to pre-sprout them, put them in soil, and then put the trays into the fridge for 2 weeks, and then I will plant them out into my cut flower garden and they will bloom super early. So I'm excited about that. The last one I have are anemones, and I have the white, the black eye, the classic anemone, and then I have the rainbow pastel mix, which is just this pretty mix of pinks and pastel-y colors. Really, really, really pretty. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pre-sprout them. You don't have to pre-sprout anemones, but I figure I'm going to do it with the ranunculus as well. Pretty funny, last year when I planted my anemones, I planted them all upside down. So I have to do a little bit of research on what the right way to plant anemones are. It doesn't matter. I think they're related to onions. I think that's what they said. So it really doesn't matter if you plant them upside down, but I just want to see if I get a better crop if I plant them right side up. And those, both the ranunculus and the anemones, will go out on November 6th. So you can see, the first thing I have to do, at least for this, my cut flower garden, I have to start doing something in August, right? I have to sow my snapdragons in August. So this is coming up, we need to start thinking about this. And again, I'm in zone 9. If you're in a lower zone than me, then this whole timeline is going to be pushed up for you. And that's why I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible, because I just wanted to remind you all that you should start thinking about this. If you're thinking about doing the cool flower method or fall planting your bulbs, it's time to start thinking about this. It's time to order them all, and it's time to get yourself going on these. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section and I will try and answer them the best I can. I will leave all the links that I talked about today in the description down below. That includes my Google Sheets document, that includes Lisa Mason Ziegler's book, the Johnny Seeds, all that kind of stuff, the Eden Brothers, everything that I talked about, I will leave down below. So hopefully those resources will help you. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this and I hope you all have a chance to get into your garden today.